you know, I'm working, and there's absolutely no way that I can get off from work today. I said, and where am I going to find a place to put the boat? He says, that's not my problem. He said, the boat needs to be moved, and it needs to be moved today. And so I began to realize today that I think the reason that he was annoying me so much was because I was kind of used to winning. I was used to being able to kind of talk people into what I wanted them to do, even if they weren't agreeable in the beginning. By the time we'd finished the conversation, I, had pretty much kind of gotten them into my way of seeing it. And this guy wasn't budging. He said, today, before 6 o'clock. And so I called around really quickly. I found a place where we could put it in dry dock. I called my brother, because my husband wasn't able. I called my brother. We got a truck. We took it to this dry dock place, and I went back to work. And I was so angry all day long. I was so angry. And I went to my second job, and I was still angry. The nerve of this guy calling and making me move this boat. And I was driving home, and I was going through first-year class at the time with Dr. Marcia Pierce. And one of the things that she told us in class was to always look for the blessing. She said, there's always a blessing in everything. And so I'm driving home, and in my indignant voice, I said, well, I'd certainly like to see the blessing in this, okay? So I got home, and it was it was a very, very windy day. The wind was really, really high. And, even to the point where I was driving home, it was blowing the car. And I got home, and I turned on the news. And on the news, the first thing I see is where they're showing that all these boats from the San Leandro Marina have been blown out into the bay by the wind. That's how high the wind was. And I said, I guess I see the blessing. I guess I see the blessing. So the thing that was so powerful for me in this experience is that this person that I was seeing as my adversary turned out to be my ally. He turned out to be not the person who was calling to annoy me and to make me do something that I didn't want to do. He called, and he was the person who helped me to move something that was very precious to us at that time, to keep it safe. So somebody said, well, Dar, they could have just let all the boats go. They could have just said, okay, well, these people haven't claimed their boats, so we're just going to cut the line and let them go out into the bay. That could have happened too. But mine wasn't one of them. So that was one of the things that we saw at the conference. There was a workshop, and it was titled, Play a Bigger Game. And it was talking about being able to, at some point, look at the experiences in our lives and at the people in our lives that we have seen as our adversaries who have helped us to move, who have actually initiated that move in our life that brought us to where we are today. And I guarantee you that when you do this, see, I was not angry. I was angry with this guy for about 8 hours, maybe 10. And it was over because I got the blessing. And if we ask for the blessing, the universe will show it to us. And I was able to let it go. It's one of my most powerful stories today. I love to tell that story. So in answer to that question that I said, how do we know which one of the things that show up in our lives show up for our greater good? All of them do. All of them do. So what if we trusted that when they show up? What if we didn't waste any time with them and carrying them for the next 600 years? What if we trusted that in the very beginning? So there were a few things that I wanted to share, a couple of quotes from other people that dealt with this. The first one, and I just jotted them down really quickly so I don't have names attached to them. That which is knocking on my door comes for my good. Okay? Number 2, acknowledge the hunger within you. Sometimes we turn down the hunger dial so that we won't be disappointed. Number 3, greatness is that part of you that is being called out of hiding. Number 4 came from Dr. J. Release the resistance that has kept your desire at bay. And number 5, the truth of the desire tells us that the desire is possible. So don't focus so much on the desire itself. Focus on the truth of the desire. So I guess the thing that came through for me as I contemplated this talk was that even when the caterpillar was crawling around linearly on the ground, it always had a butterfly within it. The butterfly was always there. See, it had within it everything necessary for a new life. So do we. Okay? I began to notice also how my own life is changing. I began to notice how things are becoming far easier for me than they've ever been. Far easier. And that's because I have really started listening to what it is that we teach, and I've begun to trust life. I've stopped doubting that my good would be revealed and started knowing that it must be revealed. See? And many times, as I said before, it doesn't show up in the way that we want it to show up. That $5,000 that you might have needed, that you said you needed by the end of the month, okay? It might not have shown up all at once, because we say, I need $5,000. We'd love for somebody to walk up and hand us $5,000. Or we'd love for somebody to walk up and hand us a check. So it may not show up that way. It may come a little here and a little there. And it may come from channels that you never expected it to come from. And yet, at the end of the month, you realize that you demonstrated it. Because you trusted. Because you trusted it. It's all here because you trust it. You realize that you have been transformed. That you yourself have gone through a metamorphosis where you're no longer the worrier. You've transformed into the knower. And yet, the knower was always in the worrier. It was always here. And when you thought nothing was happening, something was happening. And when you thought your desire wasn't being acknowledged, and your prayer wasn't being answered, it had already been answered. So ultimately, my message for you would be August Gold's message for all of us. When the 3 strange angels knock at the door, admit them. Let them in. Trust life. And move from the caterpillar to the butterfly. Let it be your way. Thank you for being here this morning, and so it is. Thank you. Thank you, guys.